Hello. Thank you for joining us for this U.S. Spiritist Movement in Action, a special program, part of the Spiritism Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, we will be talking about ways to reach the young minds in Spiritism or the Spiritist movement. How can we talk to this younger generation of truth seekers that have either grown in Spiritist centers or just joining the movement in the United States? What are some challenges and important aspects to those who work with the young ones? Well, I'm honored to be joined today by two Spiritist volunteers, also young minds themselves, in a way, to approach this very interesting topic. So, first, I want to call my dear friend Beatriz Lopes from the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center of Danbury in Connecticut. Hi, Bea, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining me and our next guest to talk about this very interesting topic. And my next guest is Maria Zago from the Spiritist group Emmanuel in New Jersey. Hi, Maria. How are you doing?
Hi, Yuri. Good. Hi, Bia. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us to talk about engaging young minds in Spiritism. So, the way this program goes is we're going to be having a panel, a conversation with some topics, some questions for us to debate and discuss and bring more information to the public. So, first, I want to start with Bia. Bia, how do we balance tradition and innovation when teaching Spiritism to youth?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's applicable to all education that we do. But it's important for us to stay true to the teachings, as you mentioned. Like we need to balance this tradition, right? The content, the literature as it is, but also we need to innovate. We need to make it applicable to youth where they are right now in their lives. And we see this all throughout history, right? When we look at Jesus's teachings, it's hard to put ourselves in the shoes of that time because world is so different from then as it is now. So it's the same way as for us, even adults, it could be hard to imagine what it was like in Jesus's time. Could be how youth are feeling about certain literature, Spiritist literature, or even Jesus's teachings. And so the same way that the gospel according to Spiritism kind of brings Jesus's message and helps us explain it with the context of the time, we can do that as well with Spiritist teachings. And so, of course, we want to keep the foundation the same, the essence the same, the literature the same, but then we can innovate with the debrief, the activities, the understanding, so it becomes applicable to our lives today. And we can make that connection and feel more in tune with the messages that sometimes might seem a little serious and formal. And how does this relate to me? But I'd love to hear your thoughts, Maria, on this question.
Yeah, I totally agree. A ton of things you said. The something that came to mind for me was in the spirits book. Sometimes I read the questions, and although it was written in 1857, it's like the questions were asked today because some of them
Mm-hmm.
are so accurate, and it's stuff that goes on in everyone's daily lives, right? So I think if we take a little bit of this and a little bit of that of what is, timeless, and other things that are a little bit hard to digest sometimes, then that's how we can apply it in our daily lives today, because the foundation is the foundation, right? The doctrine is the
Mm-hmm.
doctrine, and that's not changing. But I think sometimes you do see or you do read a message or a question, and it is totally, how do I fit this in my life now, right? This was so long ago. And then other times I'll read a question and I think, how did they nail this? It could have been written this month, right? So I think there are those moments that you see it is truly timeless, and we need to kind of find more of those. And that's what's going to really like catch, the young minds, like Yuri was saying, and make them realize, you know, everything you're thinking there's a solution to it. You can find it.
And I think it's so
Amazing. Yeah.
sorry, I think
Go
it's
ahead. Go ahead.
so interesting, this part that you brought up too, like a bit of both, right? A bit of tradition and a bit of innovation, because I think it's also really important that we have the tradition, the literature as it is, right? Like we aren't going to change the parable from Jesus. The parable is what it is. It's about just right, like learning from it, debriefing, going through activities to really process it. But I find it really interesting when we're talking about Spiritism in the US that there tends to be this gap where if you grow up in Spiritism, you are in the youth education programs until you're 18. And then once you're 18, and Maria and I know this phase very well, once you're 18, you're supposed to immediately jump to the adult classes. There's no in between, there's no transition. And so this can be a really hard time for young adults to figure out where they fit in at the Spiritist Center. So I also think it's important when we're talking about education itself of bringing pieces of the actual literature, whether it's like Maria was saying, a few questions from the Spirits book, and then expanding on it, debriefing, having activities. But it's important that they start getting familiar with the actual literature, with, the Spirits book has a very specific layout. So making sure they understand that. So when they do take those steps to be in like the adult study classes that might be a little more like book focused and aligned with the literature, they're more prepared for what it looks like, what it means to study the actual books. So I think it's really important that we help teens and young adults make that connection so they're not so scared when they go into the adult classes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, amazing. I think thank you so much, guys. And for those who don't know, these two, they work with the young minds in Spiritism. So it's your opinion and your thoughts are very, very valuable for this discussion, because it's, as you're saying, we can't really try to change the parables. We can't try to rewrite something, nobody's nowadays necessarily sowing wheat and so let's change the tares in the wheat parable or something like that. But it's more about applying it to today's reality, especially in terms of speaking their language, right? Which is something that I know you two do extremely well, speaking the youth's language in a way where now they're understanding the parables and how those teachings are so important. Even though we talk about innovation, it only goes to a certain point where we have to innovate, let's say with the language or things like that, but it's important to have this different mindset. So I think both of you guys were very good in your comments in that regard, because it is going to help a lot of people out there who are trying to teach the youth and who are trying to educate and guide all the youth that are coming into Spiritism, especially with this thing that you mentioned too, Pia, the transition between, okay, you're now 18, bye-bye, there's no adaptational period, there's no transition there for like a more adult, quote-unquote adult content. So it's interesting that we're now balancing the tradition, keeping the roots, as Maria said, the essence, but making these adaptations in terms of innovation to teach Spiritism to the youth. That's very good. It's very good. Also, one thing I was thinking here is, I mean, nowadays, with the Spiritist educators like you guys are, how can the Spiritist educators, I'm going to ask Maria to go first for this one. How can the Spiritist educators create safe spaces for all these, young people that they a lot of the times they want to discuss things that are afflicting them, anxiety about this, role indecision, relationships and things like that, but using a Spiritist lens? How can we approach those the youth that we know mental health is a big thing nowadays, especially very talked about youth? They want to reach out, they want to approach, they have that need. So in terms of an educator, in terms of somebody who is a guide to other youths in Spiritism, how would you say we can create safe spaces, Maria?
So I think that definitely starts with the educator or the adult, right? And creating guidelines, or not guidelines necessarily, but expectations in their class, right? Emotionally, I don't want to use the word rules, but you know what I'm saying. And that it is the same for everybody, right? The students and the teacher, because then when we start treating people differently, then the student then does not see the educator as trustworthy, right? So I think in my professional life as well, I work with children. So that's where that starts, is with the expectations that you set whenever the beginning of your year is at the Spiritist Center, or when a new student joins and you recap everything. That's a great opportunity to do it too. So not only, you know, emotional expectations that you respect them and you know they will respect you back, but the educator has to earn that too and earn their trust, especially in, I want to say, the preteen, teen, right? Because when they're young, it's a sense of they know you're older, they trust you because you're an adult, right? You're bigger than them. But then you start getting to preteens, teens, they have, of course, more, they're developing lots of different types of relationships. And so then they might not see you as, just because you're an adult means you're trustworthy anymore, right? So you have to earn that. And I think that that's where it starts. It starts with the educator. But I'd love to hear what you have to add.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's really important to set those like rules and boundaries for, and I love that you said not just the teens, but like the adults in the class, the teachers, the chaperones, whatever it is. And one other thing that I found, and Maria, I know you can attest to this, is taking a moment before jumping into Spiritist content and Spiritist topics to do team builders to create this safe space. Because while you're taking a moment to do something that's not necessarily Spiritist related, it makes a sense of community. And don't just let it be the teens, make it be the teachers as well, the educators as well, and make this sense of community. We just recently had our annual Spiritist youth retreat, and we have over 100 teens, young adults, and chaperones that come together from all over the US. So you get there the first day, and it's all these people that don't know each other. So you can see everyone's a little quiet, everyone's in their own corners, and people aren't talking as much. And so that first day, we spend a lot of time doing team builder activities to get people to know each other, to feel connected, to feel safe. And it's so interesting because when you take a moment to do that, even if it might seem like, why are you doing something that's not a Spiritist topic? But when you take that moment, later, when you get into the more serious Spiritist content, people are much more open to being vulnerable, to discussing, to having profound reflections, because now they feel comfortable with the people they're with and they feel like they have that sense of community and comfort. So it goes a long way to take a step back and do some team builders, break the ice, get people to feel comfortable, not just the mentor relationship, but also the peer-to-peer relationships and making sure they feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if it's not a big icebreaker activity, say you have a 2-hour workshop, plenty of time to build that in, right? But say it's just the class every week, say it's an hour, everyone's coming in, you do the prayer. By the time everyone's settled, 55 minutes, 50 minutes. If all it is asking everyone how their week was, right? They know the not that they have to, right? But they know the expectation is you share something with me, I share something with you, right? So just building that connection makes them know that before anything, like, you value them as a person, right? Before we get straight into, here's what we're learning today, right? Is that you want to know how they're feeling.
Absolutely. And for the another example from the youth retreat that we've seen is in recent years, we've started having a spiritual support team of adults that are there just to help in spiritual need. Like if someone wants a calming moment by themselves, if someone wants a fraternal conversation, a prayer, there's this team dedicated just to help people throughout the retreat. And the first few years that we've offered this, no one went to ask for spiritual support. We know we all need it, but no one went there. And that's okay. They were there and they were consistent. And we keep saying the message that they're there And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, you see a few teens starting to take advantage, and then more. And then even this past year, we had so many teens and young adults taking advantage, whether for things they were feeling in that moment, or a lot of times things they're feeling in their lives in general. So it's really important as well, this consistency of, even if no one's taking advantage right now, but continuing to say, I'm here to support you. You can come to me for whatever I need, because when they do need it, even if it's years later, they have that reminder of, oh, that's a safe space I can go to, and I can, talk in confidentiality and feel supported. So I think it's that consistency as well. Even if no one's doing anything right now, keep that messaging going, because you never know when someone might need it.
Amazing. And again, you guys mentioned a youth retreat, and this is a program about the U.S. Spiritist movement in action. That is very much something that aligns with the mission and the purpose of the United States Spirits Federation. Everybody else that also contributed to that, because the youth getting together and talking about Spiritism and having this retreat is amazing, and it's very much engaging these young minds in Spiritism. So kudos to you too, to everybody who participated there. And I think you guys nailed it, because creating the safe space starts with giving that attention to the person as a person, necessarily, first and foremost, as a person, as a young mind, as somebody who, hey, we have somebody here if you need it. Maybe nobody went there, but now people are starting to go, and at least they have that option. So setting the tone, setting the expectations right for meetings, for the retreat, for classes, for all these things. And I think, once again, guys, good job. There's such valuable information for everybody out there to create this safe space for this youth that a lot of the times feel unheard. They may feel left out, and and with the icebreakers, I'm just curious, did you guys get any pushback at the youth retreat for people not wanting to do these icebreakers or these team building exercises? If so, how did you handle that?
I think the first one. Go ahead, Maria.
I was gonna say, right away, like Sobia has mentioned, it was a very large amount of people in total. Everyone, teens, young adults, chaperones, I believe 126 around. So very large number of people. The key is everyone participated, and in large groups. So it was never a one-on-one moment. Not even a group of 4, right? Because throwing someone into that right away can be super intimidating. So we had it was around groups of 30-ish, this like very first icebreaker we did. And so even 30 people, that's already quite a big group. But when we did it that way, and it made it more manageable, but at the same time, they had to do something, but they didn't necessarily have to speak with everyone else, right? But it was an icebreaker that they had to find where they fit in an order of a sequence. So they had to talk to people. They couldn't just stand there and not do it, right? So, and then some people did talk to each other more after the activity, right? When they were done with their part, they were talking to each other. They were similar ages. Did you drive here? How long did it take for you guys to get here? And if some people were quiet after they did their part, that's okay, right? But the key in that was not throwing them directly to pair up, right?
Yeah, easing them into it for sure. And there's always some, especially in that first moment, that are hesitant of like, oh, but I don't want to do this. And this youth retreat, it was pretty cold. So we were all like, oh gosh, I don't want to move around. But once you get into it, even if you're joking, one thing we said is like, even if they're joking about this activity, they're like making connections and talking about it and making that safe space.
They're being themselves. You're allowing them to be themselves, which I think is so important when helping these young minds. So it's very valuable. Maybe you guys got some eye rolls or like things like that, but at least but at least they participated. Even if they're joking about the activity, they're expressing themselves and like easing some of the anxiety and the tension for the exercise. Again, great tips. And another thing, when we talk about the youth, especially, we're talking about Spiritism. Let me ask Bia this one first. Bia, what what roles should social media platforms, because this is a hot topic right now, obviously, with the good and the bad. So I want to hear about that. What role should social media platforms, we have Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, things like that, can play in Spiritist education and even outreach? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we're talking about engaging young minds, we have to meet the youth where they're at, which is on social media, right? Everyone is
Yes.
on social media, including the adults nowadays. And of course, social media, quick shorts and TikToks, they're not going to replace an actual study. But imagine all the scrolling they're doing. And if they scroll past a nice inspirational message, something that can pause them in their day, something that they can learn about Spiritism, how good is that to get that reminder each day, right? Just like a lot of people do of opening a message from the book Happy Life once a day. If you have at least that on your Instagram, on your social media, that can make a huge impact, especially when young adults might feel a little distant from the Spiritist Center. That can spark a connection that can bring them back, that can remind them of Spiritism, even if they're not, they're at a transition period in their lives where they're not attending the center all that much, but can really make them reflect and connect with the messages, even if they're not at the Spiritist Center. And of course, Spiritism is not widely known in the US. So the more that we can, as you said, the outreach, that we can spread these positive messages, these teachings, and see where interest peaks. Because we know in the US, there's a lot of people, especially young adults, that are interested in spiritualist topics. They have this notion of something spiritualistic, but they don't know how to define it. So you never know who you might reach with some short form content on social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great, because if we think about, so we have to speak their language in a way, and the language is technology. So all these younger minds coming into Spiritism, they grew up with social media. They grew up with Instagram, TikTok, even Facebook is dying now for the younger ones. So like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all these short form content is very important that goes back to the first question about tradition and innovation. That's a way that we can innovate to reach the younger minds. Would you agree, Maria?
I do agree. Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that Bia said that really caught my attention is that it's putting it out there and seeing where it lands, right? Seeing what I guess coming from if I were the one posting, I would be looking at the demographics, right? Seeing who it is that's interested in this, right? And it is a lot of young adults or, emerging adults, right? Out of probably maybe even out of college. When you're in that area of life, you're still trying to figure things out. And some people, the first thing they do when they wake up is grab that phone and they start scrolling, right? So even if the first thing you see in those few minutes of scrolling, like Bia said, is an inspirational message, then, we did at least it was there, right? I'm trying not to say like, oh, we did the job, right? Not we, but then at least it was done, right? So I think it's like that. If there's not another, like Bia said, of course it doesn't replace, right, a study, physically going to the Spiritist Center, but we know there's other forms of learning and reaching and connecting with people. So if that's a form to do it, then why wouldn't we be taking the opportunity to do it, take advantage of it, right? So I 100% agree with what Bia said, meeting them where they're at.
And even with YouTube nowadays, that we think about lives or Instagram lives and things like that, that people, like you said, the courses, Maria, like something that they're not going to necessarily go and reach out for a book or stop by a bookstore. It's becoming more like very rare these days. So we can't, I don't think, we have to like fight with technology necessarily. Yeah, we got to adapt. Okay. So if they're going to be scrolling through their phones, at least let's provide them with an inspiring message. Let's provide them with something that will be a small seed, or something that will pique their interest, and they can they can ask themselves, what is this about? This is interesting. I've had this thought before. Let me learn more about this. Let me learn more about Spiritism. Like you guys mentioned very well, could be an emerging adult, could be somebody struggling through their first or second year of college, could be somebody in high school that they're struggling as well, and they have all these questions. All of a sudden they may find something, because they're going to scroll anyways, and they find something that they can at least quote unquote consume that content, but it's actually something that is valuable, and it's not just shallow content that we have, so or pointless content that we have so much out there. And it's I think it's great for everyone who's listening to this, all the Spiritist centers that are a lot of the time struggling to like innovate or find ways to engage with the younger generation. Having this in mind, how to utilize technology in a way that will draw them closer, not necessarily just say, no, we're going to just have physical books and we're going to just stick to reading long passages. Every study is 2 hours long and it's off of a book. And that's not going to, like you guys said very well, speak their language,
Yeah.
And how, like, I mean, still on this content. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Still, I guess, in this idea of because the social media is such a hot topic, and like I said, there's so many drawbacks, but there's also so much upside, and there's so many advantages that we can utilize social media, and like YouTube as well, to reach these younger generations. TikTok is another one as well. That's a big one. And how can we, and I say we, those who are volunteer in the Spiritist movement, how can we communicate these timeless principles, the essence of Spiritism in a way that's going to resonate? Maria, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the thing is, it's the type of content, right? So some people nowadays, our minds are moving so quickly, our eyes just scan and we go, right? Some people are listening to things on 1.5, 2 times speed, right? So you would like to post something 10, 15 minutes long, right? You would like to post the 3-page long message, right? But it's not quite about that. It's about, if you get that one glimpse, then we should make it count, right? Like you said, there's already a lot of, I like the word you used, shallow content out there, right? So even if it is something short, we know the social media apps that are really popular right now are all the ones with short form content, right? Even on Instagram now, it's the reels that are more popular as opposed to just even a photo with a caption, right? So I think it's figuring out how to condense a lesson or a message or a reading, condense it even a little more, even if you have to take out some things to make it more like chewable, but the point is still there, right?
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing of, this goes back to like the parables, right? In Spiritism, we're not going to change the parable, but when we're putting it on social media, we also can't just get the block of text of the parable and paste it on a photo and expect young minds to read that, right? So how can we make that more dynamic, more engaging, shorter, getting to the point, and within reason, using everyday language, because we know some of the language that's used in the Spirit's book, but even when we go to Jesus's messages, it's very hard language. Even if you're an adult reading it, it can be hard. So how can we put it in a way that's more applicable to today's language, easy to digest, as Maria was saying, like it's a glance. So how do you capture their attention at a glance, inspiring them to the same message without, right, pasting a whole long blurb there? That could be a beautiful message, but it's not going to get too many people reading it.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
and also adapt. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was gonna say, and then unfortunately, we not that it goes wasted, but it won't be seen and appreciated, right? So if we can find a way to something that a lot of people do is say, you want to say 5 bullet points, you only put the first one in the video, right? And then if they are interested, maybe they'll click on it and read the caption and read the other 4, right? But if not, at least they got one. So it's kind of like that. You give them a little and you hope that they're interested enough to go further.
And that's amazing, because it's all about not forcing anything, right? So you put let's say you put, well, like you said, Maria, like you put one bullet point and they have to like scroll to the right to see the second and the third and like go like that, which they're very used to the phone, which also made me think of the Level Up the app. So like having apps right now, Level Up Spiritist app, I think that's the name, if I'm not mistaken, where you can even have games and things on the cell phone that will like show them events, that's gonna give them like daily quotes and things like that. Can you speak a little bit more about that use of technology to reach the young minds?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we know youth are on their phones, and so there's the Alan Kardec Spiritist Center of Danbury, Connecticut, in collaboration with the United States Spiritist Federation, have created 2 apps. Be My Hope is one just geared towards everyone, of like hopeful messages, but the Level Up Spiritist app is specifically for Spiritist teens and young adults throughout the United States. And it has inspirational messages, it has games, like questions, like like a quiz. Another really great feature is that it has like a Spiritist Center map around the US, and that's a really important point to advertise, because especially in that transition period we were talking about, where teens, young adults might be moving, they might be going to college, they might not have a Spiritist Center near them that they know of. So it's a really important thing to show them, hey, even if you went somewhere else, there are Spiritist Centers. Or there's virtual studies that you can join, or there's these YouTube videos that you can watch, or these podcasts. So the Level Up Spiritist app really gets together a lot of resources to pique that interest.
Excellent. It's also like that's why I thought of it. Even the name itself, Level Up, it's something that, the younger ones will, the gamers out there, or people who are used to a generation of games everywhere, on the computer, on the consoles, on the phone. So everywhere they're gonna find it interesting, and I know it's very colorful. So this is a great example of an initiative to engage these young minds in Spiritism, and I think we should always highlight these things. So that's why it's good that we bring this up to people who are listening to this episode, and they may look it up and they may spread it to the younger minds in their Spiritist centers and things like that. And Bian, since you're just talking, let me ask you this now. Many young adults, are spiritually, we can say, curious, but hesitant about organized religion. And this is something that we see whenever we receive sometimes people that are coming from other religions or from no religion at all, and they show some resistance, or hesitancy. How can Spiritism present itself as, a welcoming, rational, and relevant movement, or set of ideas to those people who present like that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think what's so important, I think it goes back to this safe space of no one's being forced to do anything, right? To make it an engaging place where you can get out of it what you're hoping to get out of it. If you just want to sit in the study and not maybe just soak it all in, not talk as much, if you want to be talking, right? Having that safe space where people feel comfortable to express themselves, to be themselves, as we were talking about. And I think it's really, again, I go back to this gap that happens where even Spiritist youth who've grown up in Spiritism leave the Spiritist centers. I think all Spiritist centers in the US can say that they've seen this, that once it's that 18 mark, they start their job, they start college, they're gone from the center for a bit. And people wonder why. But it's this moment that they're trying to, for the first time in their lives, make their own decisions, figure out what they want to do in their lives, who they're going to be, with them making their own rules. And what's so powerful is to keep that encouragement, right? Keep that hand reached out, not forcing them to come, but keeping that door open. Because when it's amazing and it's so like heartwarming to see that when those young adults come back to the Spiritist Center, it's so much more powerful because now in their own lives, they've made that choice to, oh, I want to go back to studying that. I want to go back. I want to learn about this. I felt good when I was at the Spiritist Center. I'm looking for that. And so it's so important that you let youth and young adults the time to explore these feelings on their own, so that when they do desire it, it's really coming from them. They're having that passion. They're not being forced to be there. They're wanting to be there. And I think that makes a huge difference. Of course, when we're talking about the younger kids, when we're talking preteens, teens, I know parents, sometimes you have to drag kids to the Spiritist Center, but it's in that time where they can now start making decisions from themselves.
Yes.
That having that safe space, that door open, and, you know, just knowing that this is what you want to get out of it, no one's being forced to do anything, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. The very last thing you just said really spoke to me, is that sometimes there are kids, preteens, teens that don't necessarily want to be there. Like you said, the parents are dragging them in, right? But then it's like I was saying earlier, it's the educator's job to, they are still welcome, right? That teen, that they know that they're still welcome, whichever age group it is, right? That even if they're feeling, oh, well, it was someone's birthday dinner tonight, I didn't want to be here, right? Or I'm too tired, I didn't want to come, my parents made me come, that they know even if they don't want to talk in class today, they're still welcome, right? The door's always open for them. And that is what, hopefully, right, like Bia said, one day they will make the decision on their own to keep going, and that it's that much more powerful. And I think the thing that I love so much about Spiritism is that it is inviting and the doors are always open, right? Because there's so many other ways to learn, right? It's not just open the book, read the book, 2-hour study, right? There's other ways to do it, right? It can be a reading, it can be an organized study, right? It can be questions from the Spirit's book, it can be the Gospel according to Spiritism, right? But that's what, and I like what Bia said too about, you can get out of it what you're looking for, right? Because there are so many ways to study and practice Spiritism. It's not just open the book, read the book, right? There are so many, there's always more resources, right? Which is a good thing that's growing, right? But there are so many other ways you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, again, great point that you two made, because we're not forcing anybody. I mean, of course, parents sometimes have to, quote unquote, have to drag, their kids and older children or young teens that they rather be at home sleeping or or be playing on video games or doing stuff like that. But in the end, even a lot of the times what we see is people, they make their own decisions. I'm 18 and then they don't go. But then let's say 1 to 3 years later, maybe they start to come back, but they come back on their own terms. And I think that is, like you two said very well, leaving the door open and just extending a hand to them is very powerful, to say, hey, we're not going to force you to be here if you don't want to be here. But like, if you want to be here, please do know that you're welcome and the doors are open. More often than not, we know that the parents, kids sometimes don't want to be there and parents drag them. I actually know a case that's the opposite, that I met them at the Spiritist Center that I go to, and they turn out to be my neighbors from the same building. And the girl, she's 12, she begs the parents to take her to the Spiritist Center because she loves the study, she loves the young the group of the young people, and the parents are like, oh, we have to go because she's going. Then they always go there, they watch the talks, they engage, but it's because of the child that wants to go. But usually we know it's the opposite. It's the parents that want to attend the meetings and all of that, and they're quote unquote dragging the children. But even if they're dragging the children, even if they're there and they're a little grumpy, there's always something that they can take from it, and there's always help available. There's always, we know how these things work, and there's always a way that we know that something is staying with them, even if they seem like very resistant,
Yeah,
very hesitant.
absolutely.
And I think that, you know, we have to be able to have that welcoming environment, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And like help them build that toolkit, right? Even if they're not, um, like you said, even if they're sitting there like, oh, I'm bored, I don't want to be here, but giving them those small things that they can keep in their back pocket are so helpful, because when they are in a moment of struggle, it'll come to mind. They'll remember that.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. And even if they're not, I guess I'm going to touch on that too. You know, sometimes there are cases of the you might just be sitting there not doing anything, right? Not participating. But we know that education is never wasted, right? It's and being in the center physically, we know that that has its benefits too, right? And no one's going to hopefully no one's going to walk out of there feeling worse than they walked in, right? You you walk out feeling
Yes.
lighter, right? Because of the energy you're surrounded by. Because even if you just went in and didn't say anything all class, but guess what? You still got the prayer, right? So we know that sometimes it takes a while, right? But it's about leaving that door open.
Yeah, and I think again, it's spiritism. We know because we're, you know, we're volunteers. We're always very passionate about spiritism, and thinking about all the challenges that kids have nowadays, teens have nowadays, you know, young adults as well, face in this, you know, challenging world. What do you guys think? And let me start with Maria now. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think, Maria, that spiritism has or can bring to the table that can help, you know, address and can help console and soothe these young minds that are seeking, you know, some solace perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that um, the educators of many different ages, right? B and I are very close in age, but of course, there's people that are much more experienced than us doing the same job, right? But one thing we see is that the teens today, young adults today, are facing issues that are like brand new. Not brand new, but just like different than 10 years ago,
Uh-huh.
even. Maybe even like 8 years ago, even, right? Like things now. I'm trying to think, but I'm trying to give something specific, but just like
So
finding
like
a job after
substance use, like,
college, right? I
and like
even that,
substance
yeah.
use, yeah, like different,
It's so
like
much
vaping
bigger.
nowadays, or cards or things like that, that like for somebody who's been doing that for like 30 years, 10 years ago they didn't even know what that
It
was. So
wasn't.
like the challenges are different,
Mhm.
right? Like
Mhm.
how
The
accessible these things
challenges,
are.
yeah. The challenges themselves are different. Like I think the first thing that came to mind was you know, even with a degree, getting a job is hard sometimes, right? So
Yes.
they're in that very vulnerable stage of life, right? With challenges that sometimes you've never seen before, even if you've been an educator for decades, right? But what Spiritism offers us is that mindset of or the knowledge and the comfort that we are always growing and evolving, and sometimes it's hard to get out of what you're currently going through, right? But you know, as a person you're always growing and evolving, all of us collectively, our planet, right? And I think, of course, you know, that's not the first thing you're going to say to someone is, well, you know, the whole planet is going through trials and expiations, so it's just a part of it, right? That won't read very well. But Spiritism offers us a lot of different ways to look at these challenges and, you know, maybe take a step back from the situation, take yourself out of it a little bit and state the facts out loud, right? Not, I'm stressed, I'm this, I'm that. It's, this is happening to me, and let's look at it from the outside, right? This is just one page in the book and or one page in the chapter, you know. So we're given the knowledge and opportunity to see life like that, that today is not the end, right? It's not a bad life, it's just a bad day.
Yeah, I love that. that last quote that you just said. And the thing is that young adults or teens are younger generations that, you know, you can hear a lot of complaints of like, oh my God, this generation is hopeless. Like, what are they doing with all this technology, right? Like you get a lot of those negative thoughts, but they're actually soaking up so much information. The younger generations are so curious. They're sponges of information. They want to learn. You know, a lot of times you see youth scrolling on their phones, have headphones on all the time, which I can't understand how they do that, how they listen to things while they're watching a video. It's insane. And when you see it, it's like, oh my gosh, they're just wasting their time. But the truth is, they're actually soaking up a lot of information. They're actually going on YouTube videos to learn things. The minute a question comes up, oh, I wonder what this is, they're researching it. They're trying to understand. So they're actually soaking in a lot of information. And I think the scientific aspect of Spiritism helps in that. It gives those answers. Questions, they're asking questions, they want to know why, right? The younger generation, they're going to ask why. They're not going to just take a simple answer that they can't get behind.
Yeah.
They want to know why. So they're going to research that, and Spiritism can bring the answers. So I think that's really helpful, because this younger generation, while they seem like they're always on their phones, always on technology, they're seeking information. They're learning about things all the time.
They are, and it's great that you guys, you know, to mention that, because we know about the consoling aspect of Spiritism, and the ones that, you know, like I said in the beginning, I said the truth seekers, you know, that's the younger minds. They want to know why this is that way, and you don't just say yes, it's this way because it is. What do you mean because it is? It's not enough, you know. You can't. It does not suffice to them. It does not satiate that curiosity. So they want to know more and more and more. And Spiritism being, you know, this having the religious aspect, the scientific, and the philosophical aspect sort of tackles all. I think it helps tackle all these things that a lot of these young minds are looking for. Would you guys agree?
I absolutely agree. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that it's not just or like I was saying earlier, it's that you can learn at your own pace, right? You can you have specific questions. There's books out there, right? There's stuff to learn. There's things that can be researched, and like Bia said, they're quick to it, this generation, right? They need more, like you said, are always looking for more. They need a little more stimulation, but we can do that, right? We can meet them where they're at. And Spiritism can do that for them, just at a different pace than maybe other generations are used to.
Absolutely.
Amazing. The pace is something important, because everything is much faster now. So once again, we're talking about this word adapting to the younger generation, and that's very important, because that's we have to do that. We everything progresses, and we have to adapt. And I guess one, you know, last topic that I wanted to touch base, you know, here and talk to you guys about is, given we're already very very short on time, but I'm curious, you know, let me ask Bia now, how do you think Spiritist centers, Bia, can make teachings, you know, more engaging and relatable to now let's talk maybe more about children, you know, like the younger one, the very young minds. If you have any tips or anything that you have observed and you've seen, how do you think they can make it more engaging, more relatable to the very young minds?
Yeah. And I'm so glad you asked this question, because I think there's so many good resources on effective education. And one of these tools that is used often all over in all types of education is the head, heart, and hands model of teaching. And I think it's really important, because when you talk about head, you're talking about the critical thinking. You're talking about like digesting, what is this new information, the new topic that I'm learning. Then when you talk about heart, you're thinking about, okay, how does this connect to their feelings, to their emotions, to their personal life? And then hands is about doing something hands-on, a hands-on activity, because they might not remember the exact quote, the exact parable, the exact lesson, but they might remember that activity that they did, an arts and crafts or a song or a game that relates. And so it's important when we're doing lesson plans to have those 3 components. And that applies to any age group. So, you know, the younger ones, it's obviously going to be much simpler content and much simpler games. And as you go older, they get a little more complex. And just the last thing, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our lesson plan project with the United States Spiritist Federation that has been putting together, volunteers have been putting together a database of free lesson plans on Spiritist education for all age groups of youth. And all of our lesson plans follow this head, heart, hands methodology, and they all have those 3 components. So definitely go check those out, and just something to think about when you're creating lesson plans and engaging all of those aspects.
Yeah,
Maria, I know
amazing.
you.
Bia, where can they find that? If there's somebody who's watching us, maybe they just started a Spiritist Center, they want to start helping children, where can they find that?
Yes, if they go to spiritismkids.us, you'll find a bunch of resources there, as well as songs for Spiritist education, videos, all sorts of things. And I do know Maria is a Spiritist educator herself, so I'd also love to know what you might implement in your classes.
Yeah, Via, thank you. I love those resources, and that's a good, honestly, anyone could put something together if they had those 3, right? And we know that each, because Yuri asked about younger kids, right? We know every child is different. Everyone has a different way of learning, right? So some are more visual learners, some are more hands-on learners, right? And we know, especially at a young age, we think, oh, their learning capacity or threshold, oh, it's just this short, right? We have to have this teeny little lesson, but it's not that, right? They can learn a lot, right? It's just you're not going to get that big old block of text across to them. It doesn't work. It's making it in their language, right? You can take the same parable and give it to each age group, but the lesson plan is going to look pretty different for each age group, right? And another thing too is going back to the educators are the ones that are setting the tone, is what matters to them, right? What matters to this age group, right? If you know the students, the children that are in your class, right? If you're close to them, maybe close to their parents, right? Or you might know their interests, right? Connecting things to something they like, right? Connecting things to maybe the holidays that are coming up, right? Because then they're going to remember, oh, we did this like right before Christmas last year, or we did this, throw in, make it special. There's a birthday coming up, right? Like things that will connect it beyond the classroom, right? Because that's when they remember it, right? And so Bia was saying head, heart, and then hands. Something that I think is very important too is using your hands, because your brain literally makes different connections when you're doing something with your hands, right? And especially nowadays with all this technology, young kids are not using a lot of their fine motor skills, right? So we kind of want them to do more stuff with their hands, right? And it literally changes the way like you memorize something. So I'm always pro doing something with your hands while you're learning.
That's excellent. I mean, head, hands, heart, right? Amazing, amazing. And this is again another great tip, another great resource we have on the bottom here of the screen. You can see the website that Bia mentioned with the FIXI, the Family, Youth, and Children Spiritist Education. For everyone who's watching us out there and they want more resources, they want more things, please check that website, spiritismkids.us. For sure, it's gonna help out a lot with the lesson plan and all these things.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we're reaching the end of this episode, but I wanted to first and foremost thank you to Bia and Maria, and I wanted to ask if you guys can give a quick final message for all the educators, all the volunteers that work with the young minds in Spiritism. Bia, what can you say to them as a parting message?
just keep going. It's going to be challenging. There's good moments, there's rough moments, but it's just that consistency, that engagement, again, that safe place for the youth that are really going to make the difference.
Great. Maria?
I love what Bia said, but what I was going to say is that working with kids, working with teaching something to someone, you will learn a lot about yourself too, right? So sometimes it is very vulnerable, and if you are just starting out, just be prepared to, you might have to lay it all out before it comes together, but it will come together, right? It's gotten better before, it'll get better again.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the tips, for the wise comments. And of course, we know as cliche as this sounds, they're the future. So we have to be able to provide and educate and take care of them. So thank you to Bia, Maria. Thank you to so much for participating and joining today in this amazing conversation. I want to thank all of our viewers as well. I hope you guys have enjoyed episode number 9 of the U.S. Spiritist Movement in Action, and we hope to see you guys on our next episode every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much. Have a great one.
Thank you all.